this here. All right. So today's workshop is all about getting your first 1,000 listeners. And as you see on the screen here, list has air quotes in it because what I want for this is to be really, this is a business workshop today. As much as it's we're going to talk a lot about podcast audience, we're going to talk about email list, but this is really about growing your email list and your podcast audience to 1,000 people fast. Just some kind of details about today. I respect your time. Especially if you're in another part of the world, maybe it's getting close to your bedtime. So we're probably 30 minutes today, 35 minutes today. If I get a little winded or get questions that goes longer than that. Speaking of questions, if we're in the middle of something and you have a question, throw it in the chat. At any time, put your questions in the chat. I might stop down in that minute to kind of answer that question. Or what I might be doing is, I should probably close my email. What I might be doing, what I will be doing is a full Q&A at the end. So, again, I want to be very respectful of time. Last workshop I did, the Q&A actually lasted longer than the workshop itself, but I want to make sure you get all your questions answered. So there will be a Q&A at the end, but don't hesitate at any time. If you think of a question, I don't want you to forget it. You can throw it in the chat. You can throw it in the Q&A at the top here on Zoom. My name is Michael Sharkey. I'm the founder of Your Podcast Coach. I'll tell you a little bit more about me in just a moment, but I wanted to share this screenshot that I took when I crossed the 1,000 email barrier. This is the back end of MailChimp. And really for today, this is what it's about. This is about getting to that point. Sorry. I was planning on showing you an email a little bit later on in the presentation, so I'm going to leave my email open, but I'll close those windows. But this is what today is about. It's about you feeling this milestone, and that really is what that's about. Because when we build our email list, what we're going to talk about today is this really incredible opportunity to market, to have two-way communication with people. So, I really kind of want to focus this on, I want you to achieve this. And what I'll talk about here in just a second is that if you are here because you've got a podcast and you've aligned that with your business, which is a lot of the work that I do, is that, that 1-2 punch of a podcast and an email list will be the most powerful way in which you can build trust, deepen connection, really turn these listeners, as we're talking about them today, into customers. So I wanted to share, I keep this screenshot for me. If I'm just kind of being honest, this was a big moment for me to kind of hit that 1,000 milestone when I crossed that barrier. And what I've learned is that, your first 1,000 is the toughest. The next 1,000 is a little quicker. And the 1,000 after that's a little quicker and a little quicker and a little quicker. And that is what business growth is all about. And as your list grows, your podcast will grow. So a little bit just about me, not really any sort of like awards and accolades. I just kind of want you to know who I am as a human being, as a podcast coach. I started Your Podcast Coach to help entrepreneurs, coaches, thought leaders create really amazing sounding podcasts. But on top of that, to take those podcasts, align it with your business so that you can make money with them. I want you to be successful. My background, as much as I'm an entrepreneur now, my background is I've spent over 20 years in broadcast radio as a major market radio personality. I was a program director of multiple radio stations. So when I work with podcast hosts, and I still work with plenty of talk show hosts, but when I work, I go through the lens of what I taught people who have talked into microphones, their whole career, how to be engaging, how to be compelling. So, a lot of people will say, hey, here's how to start a podcast, or here's how to grow a podcast. And maybe they started a podcast themselves and now they have the wherewithal to do it. I want you to know that what I bring to the table is practical things around, what it takes to be engaging and things like that, as well as entrepreneur stuff. My favorite job ever was talent coach. And that was the role that I took inside a radio station where I would work one-to-one with personalities. And that's why what I really, really love doing right now is the one-to-one with my clients. I have just launched a new coaching program, which I'm going to talk about at the end of today's workshop. But I love this aspect of, just giving the coaching element to help you take action with your podcast, with your business. And just on a personal side, we're a world schooling family. That's why I got all jazzed at the beginning. on how global today's workshop is. Portugal represented, South Africa, Texas. I'm in Mexico. I believe Inger just joined in. She's in Norway. So, this is how I raise my kids. This is us in Germany in 2018. Kind of been to a bunch of different places. We took them out of the public school system and dropped them into a world schooling environment. So teaching them around the world. So that's a little bit about me, both professionally and personally. And on the coach aspect, really what this all comes down to is I want to give you some really actionable stuff today. I want to give you stuff that you can immediately implement to start growing your email list, which would then turn into listeners and things like that. But really, this is about action. This is about taking action. And it's action versus inaction. And when I found this little image online when I was preparing this, I actually read this article about the price of inaction. I've never really thought about it until I read this article about how much is this costing you not to take action? I'll tell you a story back in probably 2015. So I left corporate radio in 2014. 2015, I launched my first podcast consultancy, which went by a different name. And then I changed it to Your Podcast Coach in 2019. But anyway, one of my first meetings with a guy was like, man, you got to build an email list. And he talked about the value, and I'll dive a little bit more into that. And of course I didn't. I was like, oh yeah, I'll get around to that. I knew better at the time. I knew I needed to grow an email list, but I was like, I'll do it. And anyway, I didn't really start growing my email list until 2018, 2019. I wish I would have started it sooner. And so as I was thinking about that, I was like, well, what is the price of inaction? Well, the price for me of inaction is I would have added 3 years and gosh, who knows, 20, 30, 40,000 names to my email list. And the value proposition of an email list is that you'll hear different people say different things, but I just read 2 weeks ago in a book that for every person you have on an email list, they can generate revenue of about $1 per month. So if you have 1,000 people on your email list, you can expect around $1,000 worth of revenue extra on top of that per month. It's going to come in different ways. And obviously that's not a scientific fact. I've heard people say $30 a month per person, but the point is that inaction will cost you money. So today, I want to help you take action. All right, so let's rewind the tape to about 10 days ago when Instagram and Facebook went down. Everybody went crazy. Everybody was going nuts. The memes were awesome. This was my favorite. I just finished watching Squid Game. So if you don't know what this is, Squid Game is on Netflix. Dark, gory, thought-provoking, but the memes were great. So, why I'm bringing this up right now is that, a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people that I talk to rely so heavily on the promotion of their business and their podcast through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and any social media platform. And I've actually, it's so funny because this is something that I've said at presentations before about the overuse of Facebook or social media. And then I saw it pop up everywhere last Monday and Tuesday when people were reacting to Facebook and Instagram and Messenger and WhatsApp going down, is that you are only renting space on these platforms. And what I mean by that is simply that you don't own Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, LinkedIn, large entities, people with the last name of Zuckerberg. Those are the people that own those platforms. So, you have zero control over what happens when you get on those platforms. Thanks for the amen. I appreciate that, Sean. And it's not even just about what happened last Monday or 2 Mondays ago when they shut down. Think of all the things that go on that you have zero control over, algorithms. So if you have a Facebook page, I have a Facebook page. And what happens when I post on my Facebook page? The thing at the very bottom says, would you like to boost this post? Because if you have 1,000 people on a Facebook page and you put a post out there, say about a new podcast episode, not everybody's going to see that. The algorithm is not going to allow it. So what Facebook wants you to do is then turn around and spend money so that the people who have already said that they want to hear content from you and have given you permission, those people you've now got to pay to do that. So look, don't get me wrong. I spend money on Facebook for Facebook ads, and they're very targeted and things like that. And I've had, a ton of success using Facebook as an advertising platform. But when you rely on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn to be the only vehicle that you can use to promote your business or your podcast, it's a long, long, long uphill climb. So which that begs the question, if you're renting on there, what do you own? Hold on just a second. Let me do this. There we go. And what you own is what we're going to talk about today, which is your email list. And that means you have taken the work, the 3-step process that we're going to go through today. You've taken the work to go and grow this email list through value. We're going to talk a lot today about action and value. This is not just something, I think this actually question came before this, is that would I buy a list? Absolutely not. You never know what you're going to get when you buy a list. I would never, ever, 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 ever do that. Email lists are one of those things that when you grow it and you nurture it, that is where you can see such gain. You can, and then again, I'm going to talk about this a lot today, and I don't hide from it, is that the only 2 things I really worry about as an entrepreneur, because we all in some ways are entrepreneurs, even if we're just podcast hosts, even if we're working full-time jobs. The spirit of who we are is that we are entrepreneurs and we want to grow our business, whether it's a side hustle or whatever. And when we do that, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things out there. Facebook, Instagram, I got to grow, and all this stuff. I worry about 2 things with my business. I grow my email list and I grow my podcast audience in that order. Those are the 2 things I care about. I encourage you, go to my YouTube. I think I have 40 subscribers on my YouTube. I use YouTube more to host videos. It's more of a video hosting platform that I unlist videos like this workshop. I have, I don't know, a couple thousand people, I think, on LinkedIn, because that's a good business platform. Point is I don't really worry about those. And one of the biggest areas I see is people try so darn hard to grow Facebook and their LinkedIn and this and that and this and that they scatter way too thin. So really going back to what today is all about, your first 1,000 or listeners, with list being in quotes, is that it's only about focusing on those 2 things, your email list and your podcast audience, because they work really, 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 really well together. Because what happens is you can take these listeners of your podcast and you can turn these listeners into subscribers on your email list. And the beauty of that is that it works both ways. It works so beautifully both ways, that when you have nurtured, if you have been on other workshops of mine where we've talked really, really, the nitty gritty about podcasts, and again, we all have podcasts. So, podcasts are just these incredibly intimate experiences for the listener. And I coach all my clients. I'll say this to you today, that if you have a podcast, make sure you're always talking directly to one person, so that you really maximize the engagement and the connection and the trust. So you've got this incredible vehicle for your business that builds trust and builds connection. And now you've got this list over here of physical emails that you own. This is your list. Don't spam, only give value. And that's a huge part of this. But, these people trust you. And if you continue to give them value, then, this is how you turn your listeners into customers. I say that a lot. This is how you turn your listeners into customers, is that you can communicate 2-way in email and you can give them great value through your podcast. So today we are going to dive into the 3 steps to getting your first 1,000 listeners. Let me just move a little Zoom thing there. And it's a very simple process and anyone can do it. I've had a ton of success doing it. I'm not the first person to teach this method. What I'll tell you is it works, and it works really, really, really well. These 3 steps that we're going to go through today. Number 1, let's see, let me do this. Number 1 is you got to create an offer. You got to create a really, really simple yet really, really valuable offer. Number 2, you're going to take that offer and you are going to exchange it for an email address. It is a value exchange. We're going to talk about the value exchange. And number 3, you're going to build that trust. And you're going to build the trust through the most important word in the world of email lists and podcasting, and that is consistency. Building trust through consistent communication. Now, this is a 3-step process. There's a few things that are going on in this. We're not going to be able to get to all of them today. So I'm going to kind of make this a flyover. But I do believe that if you kind of take some notes today, and there's going to be an interactive moment here in just a second where you can take some stuff that's in your head and write it down on a Google Doc or write it down on a piece of paper, is that you could take these 3 steps, execute it relatively quick, and immediately start, either taking your podcast listeners and moving to your email list or other ways that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So step number 1, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. Hold on. Oh, it's good tea. I love breakfast tea in the afternoon. Step number 1, create an offer of immense value that you will give away for free. And this is one of those areas where I made a mistake of really trying to almost hold some value back. Like, I can't give away everything for free because I got to make money because I'm a starving entrepreneur and all this stuff. That was my mindset, 2-3 years ago. No. And if you're here, there's a really good chance you have my podcast roadmap, that the experience that I'm showing you today, you've already kind of gone through my journey. And the very first thing you did is that maybe you saw a Facebook ad or you saw the Podcaster's Kit or one of those things where you got my podcast roadmap. I'm going to give you in a moment, I'm going to tell you about my podcast roadmap, that it's literally everything I do. So for you, understand that the higher the value, the better. So I was thinking of some examples as I was kind of getting ready for this today of just different people that I've worked with or currently work with. And as your podcast coach, as Michael Sharkey, I'm very, very honored and grateful to work with just this incredible variety of industries, which validates what I teach because it's worked for software engineers, it's worked for chefs, it's worked for home repair specialists, and a wide variety of people. So what I always say is give away almost everything. Don't hold anything back. The higher the value, the better. So let's say you're a chef. Maybe you got a cookbook that you sell for $20. That cookbook has 100 recipes. Give 20 away. Give 20 away, knowing that they may never buy your cookbook and they're just going to cook those 20 recipes over and over again. But here's the truth, is that if you give a lot of value, that's a trust building move. And they're more likely at that point to come back and then buy the cookbook or buy the course or buy whatever. And once they come back and they buy, and this is, again, because I know a couple of people on here have bought my accelerator course and things like that, is that you have an opportunity to even further that relationship. And look, at the end of the day, we're all entrepreneurs and we need to make money. We got to keep the lights on. We got to do all those things. But I so honor and respect you just for being here today that I want to give you as much value. And if at some point we have an opportunity to work together where you pay me, I would love that opportunity. But I'm only going to get that opportunity by giving you a ton of value. So you might as well start right out of the gate by giving a ton of value. This first offer, keep it simple. Make it easy to create. Don't overthink it. We're podcast hosts, right? So here's an idea that I've seen work really, really well. Let's say you've got 30 episodes or 30 to 50 episodes published, right? So what if you take 5 episodes that you've done, and maybe it's 5 interviews, where you can bundle those 5 episodes together? Are these episodes available on Spotify and Apple? Of course they are. But you've taken the work to take these 5 episodes, bundle them together, give them a name, the professional chef bundle, the software bundle, whatever. And you're just basically hyperlinking 5 episodes on a PDF or on a Google Doc that is your free thing. So again, it's a lot of value, okay? Because you're this. I'm trying to kind of share that this can be done very easy. But maybe these 5 particular episodes tell the person everything that there is to know about you as a coach or you as a leader. But give it away. It's an easy thing to do. I want to introduce you to something that I came up with one night. It literally made me sit up out of bed. I was like, oh my gosh, it spells cart. What works crazy well, especially in this conversation of creating an offer of immense value to give away for free, is what I've called the CART method. And CART is checklists, roadmaps, and templates. So I guess that would be CRAT, but CART, checklists, roadmaps, templates. They work so well. If you can give somebody a checklist of exactly everything they need to do to, start the day. If you're a transformational coach, or, if you're a chef, the perfect pantry checklist or whatever, those work so well because it is a highly perceived value that's easy for you to create. So what do? I have the podcast roadmap. What is a podcast roadmap? Let me see if I actually, I did do this. Okay. So this is my podcast roadmap. If for whatever reason you don't have it, yourpodcastcoach.com/podcast roadmap to get it. Yourpodcastcoach.com/podcast roadmap. I'll get into why that's important in just a second. But when you look at this, step 1, step 4, 5, blah, 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 all the stuff. This whole roadmap, all this is the outline of a course that I've taught. So it was really easy for me to put this together because I just took an outline of a course, right? That's all I did. But don't get me wrong, this was easy to put together, but it's incredible value because you can take my roadmap. And I encourage you to take my roadmap and you can literally follow along. And as long as you have that level of initiative and drive and the desire and want to take action, you can use this roadmap and you can absolutely have a successful podcast. Oh, cool. Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. Adam just said, I just downloaded, already seen how well this works practically. Cool. Glad to hear that. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let me just jump back over here. So again, you want to create that immense value and give it away for free. So this is where I want you to like grab a piece of paper, grab a pencil, throw open that Google Doc in another tab or whatever you want to do. And I want you to write down 3 to 5 lead magnet ideas for your business. What were, jargon being what it is that this free offer is oftentimes referred to as a lead magnet, so I'm using the entrepreneur jargon as it might be, but you want to write down 3 to 5 lead magnet ideas for your business. And, I did a podcast episode about this, about lead magnets, this is the front door to your business. This is the thing that you're going to give somebody for free so that they can come inside your world. This is no different than if somebody is, when you go through the mall, right? You go through the mall and they're handing out the chicken bits or whatever, because they want you to have that first one's free and then come over to the chicken place. I don't eat that, so I don't really know, but I've seen it. So, but that's one of those things where that's their lead magnet. For you, again, write down 3 to 5 ideas. I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, write it down. But yeah, just ideas. Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. But what is it that you do if you're an entrepreneur, a coach? Maybe you've got a course. Outline your course and create a roadmap. So write this down. While you're doing that, I'm going to take first a sip of tea, and then I'm going to take a sip of water. And the reason why I want you to do this now is a lot of times in workshops, the wheels are turning, ideas are flowing. And what I want you to do is get those ideas out of your head and onto a piece of paper or onto a Google Doc or onto some Evernote or something like that, because that is taking action. Again, coach, I can't deny it. And one other thing I want to point out is my podcast roadmap. I took this course outline. I sort of had the visual in my mind that I wanted to kind of be vectors and sort of, that sort of thing. And I went on Fiverr and I paid somebody $25 to build this. And she did a fantastic job. I've since used her for like 5 different things. And I've had terrible luck on Fiverr, and this is the best thing I ever did on Fiverr. But even the idea that I gave you a moment ago, bundling some podcast episodes and putting it on a Google Doc and saying, you can do that. But what I have found is that if you're willing to spend $20, $25 on just a nice graphic PDF, the value that you are giving, the perceived value that you are giving, even though you're giving a ton of value, that perception increases dramatically. So it's worth it to kind of take that idea, formulate it into a PDF, and have somebody design it. So let me just go back over to this thing here. So, all right, there we go. I'm going to give you, that. All right. So, all right, let's jump into step 2. This is where we get into the value exchange for an email address. You're going to take this thing and you are going to give it to somebody else as a value exchange. Now, let me show you an example of a poor value exchange. And not only is this a poor value exchange, it's actually a really common value exchange. And that is this. I hate to say it, but this is actually a client of mine right now. And I was on their website doing some work earlier, and it was somewhat serendipitous because I was also doing research for this particular workshop. And I came across what they put at the bottom. This is a tech company. They do tech solutions, so maybe it works for them. But listen to this value exchange. Sign up to our newsletter and stay up to date. So the value that they're promising me is I'm going to stay up to date. Okay, well, that's fine. And then it says, don't worry, we won't send you too much content, which is fine as well, because you don't want to spam people. But at the same time, that's not a good value exchange. Like, think about what we just talked about: roadmaps, checklists, templates, cookbooks, all that sort of stuff. A real value exchange, because you're saying, here, take this amazing thing from me, and all I want in exchange is your email. This tech company said, okay, well, you can subscribe so that you can stay up to date. See, that's not a good value exchange. A good value exchange is, hey, I'm going to give you something. All I want is your email. Because what that email is going to do is it is going to allow, it's really not just the email, it's permission. It is permission to reach out every once in a while and share some content and never spam and do all that. And the person is always in control because they can always unsubscribe. So when you create this PDF, this plan, whatever, when you create it, this becomes your singular call to action. And this is what you promote everywhere. And when I say you promote it everywhere, back to social media. So if you got a Facebook page or a Facebook group and something that I absolutely 100% believe in, never, ever underestimate the power of your own personal social media. These are friends from high school or friends from wherever. They're rooting for you. You never know. Somebody might be wanting to start a podcast, or somebody might be a chef or whatever. So use social media, but understand strategically what all you're really doing is you're going to social media because you want to get them to grab your free offer so that you can now communicate to them on email. So you're basically taking them from LinkedIn to your email list. Every couple of months or so, I'll go on social and go, hey, if you haven't grabbed my podcast roadmap, grab it now. I'll add 20, 40 people to my email list. Around the conversation of starting or executing or growing a podcast. Podcast commercial. We all have podcasts, right? Throw this thing at the first 30 seconds of your episodes. If you go listen to my podcast, which is called Your Podcast Coach, like if you grab the episode I just put out on Monday or the one last Monday, you know what you're going to hear? You're going to hear me talk for about 30 seconds, about 45 seconds on my podcast roadmap. And I end with go to yourpodcastcoach.com/podcast roadmap. That's what I do. One singular call to action is what I do. All right. Next, podcast interview. Now, this is a different conversation where we get into real fast growth. But I will tell you the headline here, and that is, if you want to grow your business and you want to grow your podcast, go be a guest on another person's podcast. Make that a rudimentary part of your business. Like a fundamental part of your business is you being the expert, the guide, the person who is now appearing on other people's podcasts. I'm so sorry that I'm getting all these emails. So here's the thing though. And again, I don't want to get too technical on this, but in the podcast interview, singular call to action. You're not saying, hey, go join my Facebook group or go listen to my podcast or go to my website. No. Singular call to action. Go to yourpodcastcoach.com/podcast roadmap. And then finally, and I learned this about a year ago, and I wish I would have known this a few years ago, 3 years ago, is go back through your emails. Now, if you're like me, I don't clean out my email inbox very often. It's kind of sad, but there's a few thousand emails in there. And I went, this guy, Brian Harris, who's with Growth Tools, was talking about, if you're just getting started, and at the time I wasn't, but it was like, well, it still worked, is go back through emails that you've sent. Because what ends up happening, and this was crazy, I probably grabbed 100 or 200 people that I had some email dialogue with, or text dialogue, or SMS dialogue with, or WhatsApp message with, that I was like, oh my gosh, they would really love this. And I put them on my email list because we've technically already emailed. And for a lot of these people, I was like, hey, just so you know, you're going to start receiving some emails from me. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. I think to this day, those people that I did that kind of like really focused, like, all right, I'm going to go through my emails and add these people to my email list. I'm fairly certain every single one of those people not only is still on my list today, they never unsubscribe, but they open my emails on a regular basis. And it's just one of those like, duh, like if you want to go, again, we're talking about getting to 1,000 and you want to get to 1,000 way quicker than I did. So with that, think about people that you already have had some message with that would be interested in learning about this offer that you have to give. And then because I want to keep this moving, because I just realized that I am being a little long-winded today because we're 32 minutes in. But step 3 is really about building trust and connection through this consistent communication. Trust and connection comes with giving value. Give, 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 give. The right people will come back to you and say, hey, you know what? I want to take that next step with you. I want to grow my podcast. I want to grow. I want to become a chef, whatever it is. But it comes through consistency, and consistency truly is the key. You know, if you've done a call with me or anything, I talk about this so often, is that if you're going to release podcast episodes, tell your listeners when you're going to release them and release them then. So if it's every Monday, do it every Monday. If it's seasons, do it seasons. But you've got to be consistent. And the same thing exists with email, because what ends up happening is, think about what we've just done. You've created this really cool offer, this immense value. You've exchanged it. You've created the value exchange. This person has said, here's my email address. Well, a big mistake people do is that they get steps 1 and 2 right, but then they don't follow up. They don't send the emails. And this may be the easiest part, especially if you've got a podcast. So a couple of things to think about is that when you get their email, and again, we're staying 30,000 feet today, but just a couple of things to kind of think about. A welcome sequence is really, really effective, meaning they give you your email. For me, it's completely automated. So basically you get the email, or you get the roadmap, and then you receive a series of I think it's 7 emails. If you got the podcaster kit, I almost want to apologize to you, because you got 2 welcome sequences from me. So it's normally 3 to 6 emails, but it normally ends with a sales offer. And let me tell you why this is important. So again, if you've got my podcast roadmap, you got a few emails, I gave you some value, I gave you some templates, but at the end I was like, hey, do you want to buy the podcast roadmap accelerator, which I believe is priced right now at $19? So I'm not, making a fortune off of this. But what you're really doing, because again, 90% of the people are not going to buy it. But what you are doing, and this is the home run for you with this particular email sequence, is you've done the value exchange, and now you're welcoming them to your list, to your community. And what you're also doing is you're basically saying, I'm going to reach out to you at some point and ask you if you'd like to join a mastermind or buy this course. That's what you're doing. That first sales offer is not so much about, driving home the money and making the big profits and driving the fancy cars and the Lear jets, or all these entrepreneurs that take pictures of cars that aren't theirs so that they look rich. You're not going to make that off of this. What that is about is just basically saying, if you want to buy it, this is a great next step. It's a ton of value for, $19 or $97 or whatever it is for you. But you know what? At some point, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to say, hey, why don't we take that next step together if it's right? Now, as far as the value emails every month, I mean, look, if you're here, you get my emails. The really kind of the big thing is just give as much value as you can in these emails. Yeah, you got emails from me this week where I was like, hey, join my workshop. But hopefully you're finding that this workshop is giving you some value. Let me give you one trick that I've learned. I'm going to go in here and see if I've still got it. Let me see here. Forgive me for doing this in real time. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. I did save it. This is an email that I try to do every month, it's being like every other month. All it is I find like 3 resources that I like, and I just put it in an email. That's all it is. I found this microphone recently that I really, really like. These headphones, I love, I'm wearing them right now. And they were on sale. And then I actually put my accelerator course in this one email. I don't normally do that. This is a super, 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 super simple way to connect with your audience and give them value. Basically by just saying, hey, I found some cool stuff. I'll oftentimes do this if I discover some podcasts. So again, very simple way to send one of your value emails that you can do every month. Adam, I'm going to come back to this question that you put in the Q&A. I appreciate that. Oh, okay. You were just telling a success story. Anyway, I'm going to come back to that in just a second, Adam. So again, it's about building trust and connection through consistent communication, giving those values. And look, if you've got a podcast and you are releasing episodes consistently, what you are going to find is that your podcast episodes turn into great emails. And, and this is one of the questions that was sent to me before the workshop that I'm going to get to about, do I email after every episode? And the answer to that's no, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But let's say you do a podcast episode where you talk to somebody and there's just tons of value in it. I must be hungry because I'm thinking about chefs a lot today, but, talking about this interviewing a chef or whatever, there's a ton of value in that. Write an email about it and then link like, hey, if you want to check out this full conversation, go here. But the reason why I put this picture up here is that the most common mistake is that you do the value exchange and then it goes cold. It's crickets. There's nothing. So it's a really, really important thing that if you're going to do this, you want to make sure that you nurture this and keep this going. All right. So just to review, create an amazing offer, incredible value, exchange your offer for an email address, build trust through that consistent communication. You do these things, I think you're going to be good. But I do want to shift gears just a little bit because understanding all of this is easy, but you may be wondering, how do I navigate all the tech? That is part of it. I use MailChimp. I've used ConvertKit in the past. ActiveCampaign is also very good. You're going to need there's a tech conversation to this. How do you implement this seamlessly into your podcast, into your business? How do you take that step? What I was just talking about when they want to get to that level of turning listeners into buying customers and really taking action. And what I'd love to share with you, and it's going to take me about 5 minutes, is how you can take this action today for free, like taking the next step, basically in a coaching relationship, because this is kind of what I do, for free. And this is something that I just launched. So you're literally the first people that are going to hear about this. My Your Podcast Coach weekly mastermind. It is a powerful yet affordable podcast and business coaching platform to help you sound amazing. Remember, talk show host coach here, and make your podcast profitable. What this is live weekly office hour style coaching calls. I do 2 a week. I do one on Tuesday. I do one on Thursday. Again, I just launched this at the beginning of October. And I set them up hourly. So knowing that I've got people from around the world, there are different times on Tuesday and Thursday just to make sure it accommodates, different schedules. I'm giving you access to every course that I've ever created and have ever sold, and a complete library of workshop replays. So you get the quick start, you get access. As long as you're a part of this, you have access to all of these courses, including my complete podcast storytelling course, which is the biggest course I've ever done. I do sell it for $597 if you wanted to buy it. But this gets into like the real art of storytelling, why podcasts are important. There's some monetization stuff in there. Just by joining this, which today you'll have an opportunity to do for free, you would have access to that. And I do have the Slack community that is private that I've had for a while, but I've just started using it more. If you go to yourpodcastcoach.com/mastermind, you can sign up for it today. Little piece about social proof. If you want to know the fastest way to get people to understand what you're about and what you do, show that other people have had success. So that's kind of what I'm going to do right now. First 2 weeks for free. I want to point that out. I should tell you right now, it does cost $97 a month, but if you sign up today, first 2 weeks are free. Social proof. This is Michael Kaz. He's the host of the Michael Kaz podcast. He also does the WAG podcast with his wife. Very successful. I believe they get around 50,000 listeners a month. He is a coach. He's a 2-time CrossFit champion. This is what he had to say. Listen to Michael. He knows his stuff. He's one of the best coaches I've ever had. Thank you, Michael. That is one of the kindest things I've ever heard anybody say. This is Andy Lack. Andy hosts the Pick the Pup podcast, all about golf betting. Again, a very wide variety of people that I seem to work with. At only 4 months in, I'm at the point with my audience size, overall sound, and growth of my podcast that I hoped optimistically I'd be at a year. Could not have done this alone. Thank you, Andy. I really, really appreciate that. So that's my goal with this, is to create a mastermind where you could come in and, again, it's office hours. So if you want to talk about how to hook up a microphone, we can do that. You want to talk about how to write a great email, we can talk about that. Access to all the trainings and courses, access to the private Slack community. And like I said, it's $97 a month, but the first 2 weeks are free. If you like it after that, you'll be charged the $97 a month. You can stay for 1 month. You can stay for 6 months. This is a price that is way lower than it's way lower than my one-to-one. But the idea is being able to bring people together, and I'm kind of pushing this really hard for the next couple of months, just to kind of feel how it goes. So I'd love for you to be a part of it. Like I said, it's live weekly office hour style calls. This is not one of my Zooms, but I found it online. Access to all the courses and trainings, private Slack. This is an actual screenshot of my Slack community, yourpodcastcoach.com/mastermind. And you get access to all this. The first 2 weeks are free. Tammy basically says, when I first called Michael, I thought there was no way little old me would ever do a podcast. And she rocks. She just finished her 3rd season. She's a photographer in Glendale, Arizona, and she's amazing. Check out Through the Lens. Andy Graham. I love Andy. Andy is the CEO of a marketing company. Thank you to the amazing Michael Sharkey for his support. Coach counseled me as I took on this endeavor. If you need a podcast coach, he's your guy. And this is one of my talk show hosts, Drew Garabo, very, very talented. And I pushed him and coached him to help him with his podcast. And it's all about, again, I come back to action. I come back to coaching because it's the encouragement. It's the guidance. This is like what I love doing. And that is helping you with all the intricacies of your podcast and your business. So I'm going to leave this up here. I've got a couple of questions that were sent to me early on. I do want to see exactly. So Adam wrote about lead magnets. This is just observation from Adam, and I want to share with you. Would doing free webinars count as this? Maybe, yeah. I mean, webinar replays are actually what people use for lead magnets a lot. We ran a birding webinar last week, managed to add 100 subscribers to the email list. Awesome. That's really awesome. We gave them the option to sign up or just go to the webinar. Most agreed to sign up. Yeah. I mean, I think you're going to see that. I think Adam, this is a real value exchange. So a free webinar is absolutely going to count for that. I mean, a guy that I do a lot of work with who's in the real estate space, that's all he ever does is he keeps landing pages really, really simple. And he basically is just like, hey, here's a webinar I did last week about, new home prices or things like that. So absolutely. I think webinars, webinars and workshops are value propositions. So using them as an offer, absolutely. And if you have a question, if you're still with me, click into the chat. You can write your question down there or in the Q&A section. So a couple of questions that I want to get to because these people are not live today, but I know they're going to watch the replay. What should my podcast commercial sound like and how long should it be? So the concept of a podcast commercial being that thing at the very, very beginning, no longer than 60 seconds, just because I recommend you put it at the beginning of your podcast. But that first 60 seconds is prime real estate. And what should it sound like? I've got actually, if you join the mastermind, I have a podcast commercial template, or if you buy the accelerator, it's in there as well. But it's just a simple commercial template. It's very who, what, where, when, why. But here's the thing. What I find with podcast commercials, especially when you're doing a commercial for your own stuff, like this offer, is just talk. Like, again, I encourage you, and for the person that wrote this or you as well, go back to last week's episode of Your Podcast Coach or the week before that. I just I don't script anything. I just talk about my podcast roadmap. Like, hey, if you want this, join, grab it. It's free. And again, singular call to action. Everything I do points to the exact same thing, the same landing page. So as far as what it should sound like, I'm big on just talking, just being authentic. That's what podcasts are really good for. Be authentic, be yourself. And, I want to say sell is the word that's popping in my head right now, but, state what your offer is. All right. Do I send an email after every podcast episode? No, I don't. And here's why. Because then that becomes spam. Then you are spamming people. If all you do is send an email, and I'm not contradicting what I said earlier, because what I said earlier is that they work really, really well together. But if all you ever do is say, hey, I just put out a new episode, listen. Hey, I just put out a new episode, listen. Then a person is going to perceive your emails as just a way to promote a podcast. I see that a lot with social media where people, that's all they use, and again, it's kind of the same thing, doesn't mean you can't, like I said earlier, you can create you can really kind of create so what I'm looking for, a value exchange by saying, I'm trying to think of a really, really good example. And of course it's escaping me, but at the end of the day, what you can say is, I have this great conversation with this influencer. She talked about this, and this. These are great moments of value. If you would like to hear more, go listen to my conversation. You know what I mean? So it's not like this, oh my God, I've just got to send out an email that's promoting my podcast episode to try to drive more podcast listeners. Then it becomes spam. So don't do that. That's not an effective use of creating the value that we talked about. So, and again, if you have a question for today's workshop, throw it up in chat, throw it up in the Q&A. I did have another question that was sent to me. And of course, I did not write it down. So I'm going to give you guys a second. If you don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap up this workshop. Yeah, we're about the 48-minute mark. So that's about right. That's cool. I want to be very cognizant of your time. Also, if you are interested in joining this mastermind, it is new, and I'm grateful that you allowed me to talk to you about that. But the first 2 weeks free offer will end Sunday night. I'll remind you on email about that over the next couple of days. And again, no pressure. If it's the right thing for you, it'll be the right thing for you. If not, that's fine too. You're still going to get my emails, still going to do these workshops. Not a very good salesperson, am I? My sales coach would be like, oh, you got to be more like, it ends Sunday, do it now. If it's the right thing for you, it's the right thing for you. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So one-on-one coaching program. All right, Sean, I've got your note here. A more one-on-one coaching program. What I will do, I'll just send you a note if that's cool. I'll just send you a note afterwards, and we can just maybe even set up a strategy call. Adam, thanks for your note about downloading it. That would be. I'm really glad you had that experience. And literally, like if you grab my podcast roadmap, or you were, just recently had this podcast builder club thing or a podcasters kit thing, the process of taking you through a journey is really a good way to look at it. Yes, it's a value proposition, but you're really kind of taking people through a journey. Take them through a journey of what life is like with you. Inger, I know you were on here earlier. You've got a great thing that you are, helping people with as far as, the Christ-centered books that you're doing. Take people through that journey. That's a really important journey for your audience. And that's really what, kind of those emails are about. So if you want firsthand, grab the roadmap and look at the emails that I send. They're designed very specifically to engage a response. Yes, Adam, it's just I think, like I said, it's $19 right now for the accelerator, and I can send you the link on that as well. And again, I think that's it as far as the questions. Let me just go back in the chat. I'll give you guys a second if you have any other questions about anything. Guys, I really, really appreciate you being here today, especially knowing that we are representing Portugal, South Africa, Norway, the United States, Mexico. So this is a good one. I really, really am grateful to everybody who's here today. And I'm grateful for you if you're watching this on the replay. And if you are watching this on the replay, because I know a few of you are, shoot me an email with any questions that you have. You can reply to any email that I send out, or you can just email hello@yourpodcastcoach.com. So if there's no other questions, I am going to come over here and hit stop on this. And again, Sean, I'll send you a quick note at the when this is done on some coaching programs. It's really actually the best thing to do would be to set up a quick strategy call, just to kind of get I'd like to get some more insight on what your podcast is about and or what your business is about. And I believe that is it. So I'm going to hit that. Adam, thank you for your comments here in the Q&A. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a stop share on this. I'm going to bring it back all the way to here to my big face and my tree in the background. Again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me in this workshop. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon or evening or night. I should say good night to if you're in South Africa or Norway. And I will be talking with you again soon. All my best.